NASCAR, out of any sport, has probably had the most format changes to its championship in both recent memory and in general. You see a lot of sports, and it's pretty much straightforward with a playoff system or a year-end point system or whatever it might be. But NASCAR, we have seen countless changes through the years. In the early years, NASCAR had different point systems that would reward laps or money won or different things like that, and it was insanely confusing. From about 1975 to 2003, they had the Lapford system. Then they had 3 different iterations of the 10-man or 12-man chase for the Nextel and Sprint Cup in 04, 07, and then in 2011. Then they had the elimination chase in 2014 through 16 before the playoff system that now they've had for closing in on a decade. And in that time, there's been a lot of diluted views of what is a good championship, what drivers were really good and deserving champions in the eyes of many fans, and also in general, just who was the best of the best. And I think that it's a fun discussion to look at. We've seen amazing seasons, and we'll talk about a lot of them in this video today. But I think there's one season that is very dominant, not the most dominant in every category, but consistently across the board. One of the most dominant ones in all of NASCAR history that deserves way more recognition. And that, of course, is Martin Truex Jr.'s 2017 championship. Now, I'm going to be honest, I can understand if in the elimination style playoffs in particular, you don't really take it serious. It's hard to for a lot of fans. I get that. But Martin Truex Jr. in 2017 was a different breed. And it was honestly a really odd championship season, but one that I think you can put head to head and compare to just about any dominant season in all of NASCAR's history. When you look at his stats that year, he had 8 wins, 3 poles, 19 top 5s, 26 top 10s, 2,253 laps led, an average finish of 9.4, and a very odd 6 DNFs, which is really high in general for a full-time driver, but especially for a championship winner. It's a really weird one to look at. And when you compare it to other championship seasons that were really dominant, 3 that come to mind are Larson in 21, Gordon in 98, and Dale Earnhardt in 87. It really does hold up in some ways, but not others. Larson and Gordon and Earnhardt all had double-digit wins in their championship seasons that were dominant. Gordon had more poles, and then all of them had 20 or more top 5s. Larson had the same amount of top 10s. Gordon had 2 more top 10s in 98. Earnhardt had 2 less, but in 7 less races. And all of these drivers only had 2 DNF finishes. Then you have the laps led. Gordon led almost 500 laps less than Martin Truex Jr., even in 3 less races. That's pretty crazy to see. Larson led about 300 more, and Dale Earnhardt led an amazing 3,357 laps. Then you look at the average finish. Well, Larson had a 9.1, Gordon a 5.7, and Dale Earnhardt a 5.9. It's really odd to look at these numbers all next to each other. But you see, there's a reason for me that this season really stands out. A graphic was going around of drivers who would have won the most races in a season, the Lapford Championships from 75 to 2003, the 04 to 06 chase, the 07 to 2010 chase, the 11 to 13 chase, the chase from 14 to 16, and in the current format. And this spanned from 1972 to 2022, meaning it spanned 50 years. And only one driver got the most wins and won in every single format. That, of course, is the subject of the video, Martin Truex Jr. Now, I think that it's obviously not a apples to apples comparison to compare all these, as drivers would race differently in different scenarios if they're going for different championships. I'm sure that Dale Earnhardt in 1987 would have raced a lot differently in an elimination style points format than he would have in a season-long championship. Larson would have raced way differently in a 10-race chase in 2021 than he would have in a 3x3x3x1 playoff format. Now, while I don't think this would mean necessarily that Truex's championship is the best, I do think it definitively means it is the most consistent across the board when you compare his season to other seasons. And you can see it in the full season format and the fact that he would have won by multiple races worth of points in a season-long points race. In the chase, I looked it up, he would have clinched the championship a week early. And looking back in NASCAR history in this time shown, he would have been the only driver to ever have done that. His last 10 races were insane when you look at them. Now, in just raw numbers alone, it's crazy. 10 starts, 4 wins, 9 top 5s, and 1 DNF that was a 23rd at Talladega, leading 607 laps in those races and averaging a 4.3 average finish. And when you look at the finishes, 1st, 5th, 4th, 1st, 23rd, which is the outlier, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 1st. It's insane to see just how consistent he was. He would dominate any points format past 2004, and I don't think it honestly matters how he would have raced. He was just that good. And then you look at the elimination style. Well, he won in the first 2 rounds and was so consistent in the 3rd round on top of any playoff points he would have gotten or advantage he would have gotten that it would not have mattered had he not won a race. He had an average finish in that time of a 2.7. That is nuts for any round of the playoffs by any driver ever. Of course, winning the Homestead race after leading a fitting 78 laps would win him the championship in any format past 2013. Now, when comparing to the other drivers that had really dominant championship seasons, Larson, Gordon, and Earnhardt, you have to look at the competition they went against. In 2017, there were 4 drivers that had 3 or more wins that year. 3 wins apiece to Brad Keselowski and Jimmy Johnson, though Johnson did fall off in the later half of the year. Kyle Larson having a breakout season at the time with 4 wins, and a Kyle Busch at the height of his championship aspirations as a driver from 2015 to about 2019 with 5 victories. The only driver that really challenged Truex at Homestead for the championship, going head-to-head with possibly the best driver of the last 15 years and pretty handedly beating him. Now, when you look at Kyle Larson, he went against 3 different drivers that had 3 or more wins. Ryan Blaney had 3 wins, though a bit of an outlier season for him. Alex Bowman had 4 wins, but was not a threat for the championship. And of course, Truex himself with 4 wins, the guy that Larson had to beat. Gordon in 98 had Dale Jarrett with 3 wins against him, and Mark Martin with 7. Martin, probably the most prolific season to go against any of these dominant seasons, but still paled in comparison. And then Dale Earnhardt in 87 went against Bill Elliott with 6 wins that year, though Elliott would have won some of the playoff seasons had he been racing in that format. What I'm saying by this is the fact that over time, the competition level did go up from the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s. And I would argue that Truex's competition in 2017 was better than Larson's competition was in 2021. And I think the field overall was better against Truex and Larson both than it was against Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt being at the peak of his performance, and Jeff Gordon with Ray Evernham absolutely eviscerating the field in every way possible. It's not to take away from any of them, but just to show that what Truex did is damn impressive. And it's even more impressive when you look at the changes NASCAR went through when Truex won this championship. The big one was stage racing, a fundamental change to the way that races went. The biggest change, honestly, to the procedural process of a NASCAR race, since NASCAR really went from shorter 200-mile races a lot in more regional areas with smaller fields to realigning and aligning the field overall for the modern era to have longer races and better car counts. And with this came the playoff point debate, where Truex completely dominated that season, getting stage win after stage win, tons of wins in and of themselves, and then also being high up in the points going into the playoffs. Suffice to say that you may hate the system, I get it, but you cannot hate the player, hate that game don't hate this player, because Truex that season, in my opinion, was one of, if not the most dominant drivers in all of NASCAR history. And everybody knew, one of the few times everybody knew in this system, there was one driver and only one alone who deserved to win the championship. But with that, I'm going to pass this all over to you. What do you think of Martin Truex Jr.'s 2017 season? Do you think it is one of the most dominant championships in NASCAR history? Or do you think that it's been tarnished by the playoff system? Regardless of what you think, let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support. And until next time, have a good one.